Is Instagram worth the effort? Let's get into it. What's up, beautiful people? I'm Erin, and this is Erin on Demand, and this is another Social Media 2024 video. And today we are talking about Instagram. Now, recently I had a phone call with Instagram. There was this pop up on my profile that said, "Talk with a Meta expert, get Instagram tips." And so I filled out this little form, I guess you can call it. And then a couple days later, they gave me a call and went through a lot of tips. Now, this has actually happened to me before. And anytime I get a notification that Instagram wants to have a little chit chat, I take it, okay? Because Instagram is becoming that girl that no one really likes as much anymore. I don't know. Like, she kind of got popular and then changed up on us. So now everyone is kind of like, what do I do with the platform? There are now so many new features. Now we've got threads, and it's just a lot. And growing on Instagram can kind of seem a little bit disheartening. Like, some people might have the swing of it, but it seems like as time goes on, a lot of people are starting to migrate to other platforms, especially because monetizing Reels is not as straightforward as a lot of other platforms where their monetization programs are just a lot better than Instagram's. So, is the effort worth it? Well, let's get into it. So, what effort exactly do we need to be putting in place? And honestly, some of these kind of shocked me. So, let's get into number one. So, the first thing we talked about was the optimal amount of times to post. And there is, in fact, factual numbers. So let's get into them. I'm going to look over at my computer. 3 reels per week, 2 regular posts. So this is like carousel swipe posts. And then for broadcast, they recommend at least 3 times per week. So we also did talk about broadcast channels, which I will get into later on in the video. And then he says for lives, set a day and time for when most of your followers are online. So lives, when you're just kind of randomly like, oh, I should get on live, doesn't perform as well if you have a consistent live day and time. So if you say Wednesdays at 7 p.m. every week, I go live, being consistent with that day and time and letting your followers know that is extremely helpful. And I can attest to this because whenever I go live on a whim, it's never as much engagement as if it is when I prepare my audience and tell them when I'm actually going to go live ahead of time. So that is the optimal amount of times to post per week. Now, the second thing that was shared on the call was that hashtags are still relevant. Yes, you heard that right. Now, I feel like a lot of social media gurus have been preaching and teaching that hashtags just don't matter anymore. They clutter up your caption, or they're not useful anymore. And I honestly believed that. And I feel like I shared that in my community, whether it was like my membership or whatever. But I feel like people just kind of stopped using them because regardless, a lot of content can kind of perform with or without hashtags. But he did say that hashtags still matter and topics did not replace hashtags. So you should be doing both. So if you're not familiar with topics, basically, if you go into Instagram right before you're about to post a reel, there are a whole bunch of options, child, but one of them says topics, and you click that and you basically can pick 3 different topics where you can categorize what your content is about. Now, this is mainly to put your content into a category, think of it like a content bucket, whereas hashtags are more specific to the actual post. He also made it very clear that hashtags do not belong in the comments. So I remember a lot of times when hashtags were a big deal, we were putting them in the first comment of the video. He said, baby, don't do that, okay? Put it in the caption, and there is a specific amount of hashtags. 8 hashtags is the optimal amount of hashtags, and the size of the hashtag also matters. He suggested between 100,000 and 10 million. Anything too much lower than 100,000 or too much higher than 10 million is basically irrelevant. Okay, we also touched on broadcast channels and how to kind of build that community, and honestly, what's the point? I have seen so many people using the broadcast channels, and I'm just kind of like, why? Like, what is the point? he did make it very clear that it's kind of just something extra. Like, it's not a membership, like a monetized membership or anything like that. This is more so for like your ride or die followers or supporters or community who really want to like keep tabs on you. It's kind of like your close friends, but open to the public, basically. Where you share exclusive content or behind the scenes stuff, or just, give educational updates, whatever that is. You kind of have this channel to share that information or that content. And then I do think that this is a really cool way to kind of easily push people somewhere else. So if you have a newsletter like I do, that would be a great place to kind of promote something like that, or promoting like your membership club, like some of your paid offers or digital products. Like, I feel like this is a great place to kind of engage more with those super engaged audience members. And then it's an easy place to kind of upsell different products or features in your business. So it's basically just like an exclusive community. And he didn't necessarily say that having a broadcast channel makes or breaks the growth of your Instagram profile. Okay, number 4, which was kind of shocking, but also not as shocking as, I don't know, it was kind of shocking to me. But he said to deprioritize stories and to prioritize threads. So that's number 5. We're going to talk about stories first, though, because I basically expressed that my stories just don't seem like they perform in the way that they should, given the amount of followers that I have. And it's so weird because sometimes I will randomly have a big burst of story views, and then sometimes my story views will be astronomically low for what is typical. And so I asked him, like, what do you think makes the difference in that? And he basically said that stories just really aren't that big of a priority to Instagram. And so you can use them obviously for like in real time updates, but they're definitely not the most important feature. Now, this is a very important one to gauge based on your personal audience's like response to your stories. There are some people who get way more story views than interactions on their posts. There are some people who are big on affiliate links in their Instagram stories, so they have a lot of traffic just simply off of that. So you have to really know your audience and your community and how they're like consuming your content, because all of these aren't applicable to everyone. Now, one thing that was a pretty interesting hack that he shared was to let your stories expire for 12 to 24 hours around one time per week. So let's say you posted every day on your stories from Monday through Saturday. Let those Saturday stories expire throughout Sunday and then start back posting again on Monday or Tuesday. And he was like, you will notice like a jolt in your story views. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Whenever I stop posting on stories and then I start back once my stories have expired, I do notice that is typically the time when I have a spike in story views. So trying that once a week, I've been trying it and it does work. It's so weird. But that's a little hack for just kind of revving up your stories, or if you know you have something really important to share coming up, just kind of go dry on stories for about a day or so and then post that really important thing. And then the last thing about stories that he shared is that 6 to 8 stories per day is the optimal amount of stories per day. Otherwise, it's just kind of like too much. So you don't have to post so much on stories, is basically what he was saying. Again, subjective. Depending on how your community consumes your stories, that can be like the peak of your content where people just love your stories. And I know there are people like that for me, where I love their stories almost more than I like their in-feed posts. So for them, like if that's the case, then I would not recommend scaling back on stories. Just keep doing what you're doing. Okay, so number 5 is to prioritize threads. Now, this is me reading between the lines of Instagram is just really trying to get people on threads. Like Meta is really trying to push people because they had this huge burst when threads first came out, and now it has dwindled. Like the activity on the app has really tanked a lot. And so they're really trying to get people back on the platform, actively engaged on a regular basis. And I'm pretty sure that's what this call was mostly for. They always do these calls when there's a new feature rolling out and they want people to hop on it. So with Threads, he did share that if you have announcements, which I thought was interesting, deprioritize announcing things on stories and prioritize announcing it on Threads. Now I'm like, I don't know about that, but he did say that because Threads cross promotes to Instagram, it is a great place to kind of use to help grow your Instagram and Threads simultaneously. So I know you guys have probably noticed that our feeds are honestly full of sponsored posts that of people we don't follow, like suggested posts, and then there are threads kind of interwoven every so often that share like, you know, a bunch of threads of either people you follow or things that kind of go along with the content that you tend to consume. And it's not the whole thread. Like they give you a little sneak peek of the thread and then you kind of have to click on it to see what the rest of it says, which is a really great tactic. And I think it's great if, you know, you're trying to build your audience there or on Instagram to be relatively consistent on threads. Now, he didn't say like how many threads a day is optimal and all of that, but they really do want people on the platform. And I think the more you thread, they're trying to get it to where the more you thread and you're engaged there, the more you'll see your Instagram ticking up as well, which that goes for anything. Like the more you post on YouTube, you're going to see your other platforms. As your YouTube channel grows, you're going to see the residuals in other places. So am I about to be a threadaholic? Probably not. I do find that Threads is really useful when promoting my newsletter and sharing things like random thoughts. I do find that I get pretty good engagement on there. So I would say give it a shot, but this is also Instagram confusing their audience by just overloading us with so many different features, so many options of what to create, when to create, where to create. And there's just so much strategy behind Instagram that it has almost sucked the fun and the life out of it. And also it's just like full of stuffiness. I don't know. I think I just have a little bone to pick with Instagram. I do think it's still a relevant platform. Is it worth the effort? I think that you can put that effort into other places and see much faster, better results, i.e. YouTube, TikTok, even though it's still kind of on shaky grounds. I even think a newsletter with Substack. There are just a lot of places that you can build a community. LinkedIn, Twitter or X, even Threads, even if you don't want to really be as active on Instagram and you want to really take Threads on. I just think Instagram is it's getting to a point where everyone's just kind of frustrated. And I think it has lost the core sense of like what it is as a platform. But I do still think that it generates like brands. If you are trying to be a tried and true influencer and you want to create content for brands and all of that, then I do think Instagram is definitely a place to put your effort in. If you are trying to monetize as a business and make money and market as a business owner, I think it will depend on what kind of business you have, what type of content you're comfortable with creating, because there are just so many more options now of platforms that, you know, you can really, really thrive on. It's just that Instagram has really had a chokehold on us. And so when we think of growing on social media, it's almost always we want our Instagram to grow, which I mean, I get it. It's been around for a long time and Instagram is Instagram, right? Last thing, how to qualify for these calls. So I asked him that. He said you need to have between 10K and 100,000 followers. I have a little over 100,000 as of the call. I had like 131 or 32. He said they look at your analytics. They look at what creators have a lot of room to grow, the type of content, the level of engagement. And so if you see this pop up on your Instagram, please take advantage. You can ask them whatever questions you want. I even asked about if the verification process is worth it. And he was like, I mean, it could be like if your Instagram gets hacked, you have direct access, just different little things. Like if you have questions that you really want to get answered, I would highly recommend just keeping a pulse on your profile and making sure if that thing pops up that you respond immediately, because you might get off and get back on and it might be gone. And for me, it popped up twice. It popped up once, I filled it out, and then after the call, it popped up again. And I was like, I'm not doing this call again. But anyway, that's all the tea I got for y'all about Instagram and some of the growth tips that they shared with me. I think they're really pretty helpful. So let me know if you find these helpful and which one you're going to implement in the comments. All right, you guys, I love you. I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.